Hello, this is a story about dogs. It's been a while since I recorded a story to put onto the blog. November has not been a particularly good month. All sorts of horrible things happened right at the start, and it's kind of taken the wind out of my sails a bit, but trying to get back on the horse and get back into things, as it were. Last weekend I went out to Cockfield, a small village in deepest Suffolk, and told stories about dogs, mythologies and the legends of dogs at a fundraising event for the Dogs Trust that was being organised there in the village hall. Not very many people turned up, but those who did were very nice people, and the cake was excellent. And by the end of it, we'd raised, once all the hall and everything else was paid for, we'd raised 37 quid, which goes alongside another 22 quid that had been organised at a similar event the other month. So it's not going to break the bank of Monte Carlo, but it buys food for some hungry dogs and so on. One of the stories I didn't tell is the one I'm going to tell you now, which is a Hindu story involving the true nature of dog. Long ago, when the world was very young, Pandu, the king of the world, had 5 sons, and these 5 sons were as brave and courageous as King Pandu himself. And just as King Pandu had led a great empire, the 5 sons, when they grew to manhood, they in their turn expanded and enlarged the empire. They became great warriors, great statesmen. They had many, many, many adventures in their long lives. And all of them fell in love with the same woman and married her. So they had one shared wife amongst the 5 brothers. Towards the latter part of their life, after they had conquered what felt like to them half the known world, they went to consult an aged sage who told them that the worldly phase of their life was over. The time of power, of politics, of warfare, of empire and expansion and wealth and majesty and palace building and all such things of the world, that phase of their life had come to an end. And now, in their dotage, they needed to think about matters of the spirit. And in order to atone for some of the dreadful things that they'd done in war, for the way they'd bent the forces of Dharma, the divine cosmic order, to achieve their will, they should have to go on a long pilgrimage up the Himalayas, up to the top of the mountain, there to consult with the very gods themselves, there to speak and commune with Indra himself. And this would be a long, long, long journey from their home in India all the way to the root of the mountain and then to the very top of the Himalayas. It would be an exhausting journey. But they decided that they would follow the wisdom of the sage, and the 5 brothers and their wife set out over this great long pilgrimage. And on the 3rd day, they were joined in their pilgrimage by a small dog, a little old mangy dog, a stray dog, a pariah dog, which had followed them, and they started to notice it after a while. It was always there hanging in the background, getting a little closer and a little closer and a little closer. And while some people might have just given the poor old thing a good boot up the backside, they rather liked the dog. When they sat down to eat, they would share a little of their food with the dog, which would come and sit with them in the camp. And when they had to pitch tent for the night on their long, long pilgrimage, the dog would creep into the camp and sleep amongst the 5 brothers and their wife. And it took a particular shine to Yudhishthira, one of the 5 brothers, and after a few nights in the camp, it got closer and closer to him, and eventually it started sleeping with its head on his chest, snoring away as dogs often will, listening to the sound of the king's heartbeat. Or former king, I should say, at this point, but he had retired from such things. And now the 6 of them continued on their pilgrimage. But it was an awfully long journey, and it was an exhausting journey. And these were old men, and an old woman, and an old dog. And one by one, the brothers began to die off on this long journey. Arjun died off, Nakul died off, they each died off. 5 became 4, 4 became 3, 3 became 2, 2 finally became 1. And even their wife died. And at last, the only one left was Yudhishthira, and the little old dog. And at each death they had stopped, they had tended to the body, they had conducted the funeral rites in the proper and just fashion. They had mourned and they had grieved, and then they had moved on, and on, and on, until eventually the one remaining pilgrim and his dog came to the great mountain range itself. And looking up at what must have seemed like a journey into the very sky itself, they girded their loins, the two of them, and they made that great, long, arduous journey on foot, sometimes on paw, sometimes the dog cuddling up in the arms of the old man as he carried it higher and higher and higher up the mountain, not willing to let the poor old thing walk itself to exhaustion, not wanting to arrive at the mountain top alone. Until at length, after weeks and weeks and weeks of going up and up and up and up the Himalayas, they came to the very peak itself where they expected to meet Indra. And lo and behold, Indra's chariot came down from the sky, a great platoon of horses leading this chariot, gold and silver and jewels, and the most fabulous, amazing chariot you can imagine. And it stationed itself on the mountain peak. And there Yudhishthira humbled himself before the great god Indra. And Indra said, "You have earned your just reward. You have atoned for the wicked things you have done in your life in building your empires, for all empires are built upon blood, are built upon sin. But you have atoned for this, and your brothers have atoned for this, and your wife has atoned for this, and you will meet in heaven. Come aboard my chariot." And the old man bent to pick up the dog, the frail old dog. And Indra said, "No, do not bring that rancid old beast upon the chariot. Look at it, it's scrawny, it's mangy, I can smell it from here. Leave that rancid old thing behind, it will soon be dead on the mountain top anyway. Heaven is for you and you alone." And Yudhishthira, instead of putting the dog down, held the dog the tighter in his arms and said, "If I were to go into heaven and leave this poor beast behind, whom I have come to love and share this long, long journey with, share my food with, share the warmth of my body with on the cold nights, my heart would break. I cannot leave him. Look at him, he is old and he is frail, and as you say, he is a little smelly, but he can be washed. When he gets into heaven, he can become young again." And Indra said, "No, you must leave the dog. It is for you and you alone. If you insist on being with the dog, I must leave you behind and ride back to the heavens by myself in the chariot." And Yudhishthira stood and thought a while, and the dog wagged its tail and lolled its tongue and looked up at him with great puppyish eyes. And Yudhishthira said, "I cannot leave the dog. If going into heaven means leaving this dog behind, even though I should see my brothers again, even though I should see my beloved wife again, my heart would break, and heaven would become like hell for me, knowing that I had left this poor beast to die alone on the mountain top. I will stay with the dog, and we will journey back down the mountain, and when our time comes, what will be, will be." And at once Indra said, "Come upon the chariot, bring the dog with you." And the old man stepped into the chariot, still carrying the dog, and the dog in his arms changed and shifted and turned, and was there revealed in his full splendour as one of the gods himself, as the great god Dharma, who had been with him on that long, long journey throughout. And he embraced the old man. Indra embraced the old man, and the two explained that he had passed the test that had been set him. He had shown true loyalty to one who had loved him. He had shown true devotion to one who had shown devotion to him on that long pilgrimage. And had he taken the offer of jumping into the chariot and leaving the poor old dog on the mountainside to die, then he would not indeed have been taken up into heaven itself, but would have found himself in a very different location. But because he had valued the old dog, he would indeed go to heaven, be reunited with his brothers, with his wife, with his other loved members of his family, and new adventures would open up before him. And so the three of them rode up into the skies, and what became of them then is another story at the end of this one. Thank you.